Night 12. At Hoo, Karen, Anna, and Boo Boo talk about how they should move forward. Karen and Anna both agree that Mark and Romero are trustworthy because they clearly want to work with the three of them. Boo Boo says that only leaves Allison to vote out. Anna is okay with this because they weren't necessarily close to her anyway, especially after blindsiding her at the Emma vote off. Romero and Allison have a chat, and Allison says she knows she's on the bottom now. Romero says she shouldn't give up because anything can happen. Allison says that at this point, the only thing that could save her is a swap or merge, but she doubts those will happen. She tells Romero she would be down to work with him moving forward, and Romero says he would like to make it far into the game with her. On Hoopai, Liana talks to the opposing alliance of Caden, Tanner, and Adriana, warning them that Ivy is after them. All three of them are skeptical but act like they believe Liana. Tanner asks her what Ivy specifically said to her, and Liana says that Ivy didn't want Tanner to be in the game any longer because he comes off as a snake. Tanner squints and says he wants to invite Ivy to the conversation to see her side of the story. Meanwhile, Ivy and Sarah talk about their personal lives, and then they suddenly hear Tanner calling them over, so they both head over to him. Now, everyone is together and Tanner asks Ivy if she ever threw his name out to Liana. Ivy immediately says no and asks why that's the topic of discussion. Tanner says that Liana told him, Caden, and Adriana that Ivy wanted him out. Ivy looks at Liana and instantly calls her out for her lies. Liana defends herself and says they both had that conversation yesterday and Ivy was the first person to start it. Ivy then asks Sarah to confirm whether or not she brought up the plan first. Sarah says she's not 100% sure who started it since she came later, but she admits it seemed like Liana was more into the idea than Ivy. Liana shakes her head and says she was only receptive to what Ivy offered because she's on the bottom with Eric and Sarah. She says it made sense for Ivy to flip and make the Tanner blindside a 4-3 vote. Ivy then tells her alliance publicly that it wouldn't make sense for someone like Liana to spoil that plan if she was desperate to be in the majority to begin with. The fighting continues for a little longer and then eventually dies down. It's day 13, and both tribes get to their mats. Hoopai finds out that BJ was last voted out. All 13 players then notice a bowl next to Justin, so they all begin to assume things will switch up again. Justin notices everyone staring at the bowl, but he says he'll reveal what this is in a second. He first wants to invite BJ here so everyone can see whether Anna keeps him or not. BJ then walks in and stands next to Justin. Justin asks Anna what her decision is. Will she keep BJ for rival redemption, or will she eliminate him for good? Anna looks at her tribe and then turns to BJ. She says they obviously never talked this season, so it's no question they would never work together. She's mostly questioning what the bowl is. Of course, many people think it's a swap, but nobody is sure of it. She says that although she would love a second chance for herself in the case she gets out, she would rather do what's better for her game and her allies. She decides to eliminate BJ. BJ nods and Justin tells him he can head out now. He walks out and waves goodbye to the Hoopai tribe. BJ's final thoughts. BJ isn't surprised that Anna sent him home because she ultimately was behind his vote off last tribal council. He feels like if he was able to play this game without Anna in the way, he would be in a better mood and could probably socialize his way to Final 3. However, that wasn't the case this season and he's going to have to move past this. Back to the two tribes. Justin says that most people likely guessed what will happen now. He tells them all to drop their buffs since they are swapping yet again. They all drop their buffs, some people happier than others. Justin hands out scrolls with buffs in them and mentions that one scroll has nothing inside of it. Whoever gets that will need to head to a place called Cave of Exile. They will find out further instructions once there. With that, everyone unwraps their buff and Justin asks them to stand on their respective mat. Most people move to the opposite mat and line up. Justin then goes over the tribes. On the new Huhu tribe, we have Mark and Romero staying from their previous tribe, and then Adriana, Ivy, Eric, and Sarah coming from the opposite tribe. On the new Hupai tribe, we have Caden and Liana staying from their previous tribe, and then Allison, Anna, Karen, and Boo Boo coming from the opposite tribe. Without a buff is Tanner, so he must head to Cave of Exile where he will stay until further notice. With that, everyone walks off. At the Cave of Exile, Tanner walks into a cave, describing it as an underground temple. He approaches a table with a lantern on it, a container with 2 scrolls, and a box. He reaches the table and decides to open the container and take one of the scrolls out named Scroll Number 1. He reads it and finds out he will have to make a decision between 2 choices. His first option is to join the losing tribe's next tribal council and vote with them. However, he will have immunity for that tribal. Tanner then opens Scroll Number 2 and finds out that his second option is to join the losing tribe's next tribal council, but without immunity. There's a catch with this. If he goes with option 2, he will have an idol that only activates once merge begins. At the bottom of the scroll, he also finds out that no matter what he decides, the tribal council will occur immediately, meaning he will not be able to have conversations with anyone at camp. Whatever he decides, he must insert that scroll into the box. Tanner breathes out, talking through his options. He feels like he might end up on Hupai because they seem physically weaker, and if that's the case, he's in a majority. However, on Huhu, Adriana and Ivy are seemingly on the outs if Sarah doesn't work with them. Tanner breathes out and says this decision might be dumb, but he's a risk taker. He wants an idol going into the merge. Tanner then inserts Scroll Number 2 and confirms that he is willing to go to the next tribal council without immunity, but with a deactivated idol until merge. At Rival Redemption Camp, Jaya sits around and waits for BJ to come back. However, after several hours, he hasn't shown up. She starts assuming Anna took him out of the game. She shrugs and says she'll have to move on from that and is looking forward to the redemption challenge in a few rounds. She hopes she can automatically return to the game without competing against anyone, but she doesn't want to jinx it. At the new Huhu tribe, Sarah and Eric immediately chat privately as Sarah tells him this is a perfect opportunity for them to play the middle. Eric agrees and says that there's absolutely no way the other 4 will work with each other. Sarah says they have a lot of talking to do with the other 4 to figure out who they will end up siding with. Meanwhile, Ivy and Adriana talk as they begin to fear the worst. Adriana is convinced the other 4 will work with each other because they left Eric on the bottom. Sarah wouldn't have any reason to go to rocks for the 2 of them. Ivy sighs and says the only thing they have is her idol, but that doesn't prevent a potential split vote on their part. Ivy is especially pissed that she has her rival on this tribe. She expected it to happen at some point, but she would have preferred it happening in the merge since they seriously need numbers right now. Sarah chats with Romero to catch up in terms of the game. Romero says that him and Mark were able to crack Hupai apart a bit on their tribe since they all voted Jared out. Of course, BJ went next, but he didn't do much to save himself. Allison was going to go next if they didn't swap. Sarah then explains what her tribe went through. She says that Hupai was never going to break. She, Eric, and Liana were the next to go for sure, so the fact that they won immunities was super fortunate. Romero says it's pretty clear they will go for Ivy and Adriana now since they don't know each other that much. Sarah nods and adds that they have to beware of Adriana's idol since she apparently found it in front of Liana and Ivy, eventually becoming public knowledge for everyone on that tribe. Romero isn't pleased to hear that Adriana has an idol, but says they can work around it if they split the vote between the 2 women. Adriana talks to Eric and tells him straight up that her and Ivy really need him and Sarah right now because they have no connection to Mark and Romero. Eric says it would be wild for him to work with her and Ivy after they made it clear he was gone next. Adriana shakes her head and says that ever since Liana blew up her own game, she became the next target. She even claims that Caden was considered a wild card that people would have rather taken out over him. Eric says he's still unsure how it would benefit him to work with her and Ivy since he has easy numbers in Mark and Romero. Adriana tells him that she is able to protect him going into a merge situation. She can tell her old tribe mates to avoid targeting him, and then eventually, the alliance will have to break apart. He would still have a good chance of reaching the endgame. Eric says the pitch is somewhat intriguing, but it'll require a lot more convincing from her to get him on side. Throughout the day, Ivy pretends that Mark doesn't exist. He eventually notices her purposely avoiding him. Eventually, later in the day, Mark goes up to Ivy to see if she's willing to talk. Ivy rolls her eyes and says that they can talk, but he shouldn't be shocked if she decides to unexpectedly leave the conversation. Mark tells her he's not planning on saying anything negative. She stays quiet, letting him talk. He tells her that he just wants to know why she refuses to play the game with him, especially because the money would mean so much to their family. Ivy says she doesn't trust him with the money. She claims he will selfishly use it for himself and never share it with Selena, her daughter. Mark says that would be dumb of him to do since Selena is his wife and they want to start a family together. Ivy starts to tear up and says she never truly understood why she felt negative feelings towards Mark. She admits her first impression of him was overall terrible, and ever since, she did not trust him. Mark asks if he can hug her, but she shakes her head and says no. She still needs time to gain trust with him, whether it's through this experience or just life in general. At the new Hupai tribe, Anna, Karen, and Boo Boo reunite, excited to still be together. Anna says her heart dropped and instantly thought of the worst-case scenario, being stuck with people she doesn't know. Karen says it was relieving to see Anna and Boo Boo on her tribe. Liana, Caden, and Allison chat meanwhile. Liana and Allison get to know each other since they've never met before. Allison eventually asks her if she feels nervous with her biological father on the tribe, and Liana says she has a giant hole in her stomach. She still hasn't fully processed the fact that she is stuck on a small tribe with him. She admits there's likely no way they'll end up working together, so she's essentially a free agent for anyone right now except for him. Allison laughs and says she'll take a mental note of that. For most of the day, Liana spends her time alone, realizing that the other 5 are hanging out together a lot. It's becoming more and more clear to her that she is going home first from this tribe. She'll have to get close with Caden, the only person she really knows much about. From there, she'll use whatever close bonds he has with the other 4 to get into the majority. It's night 13 and Allison, Karen, Boo Boo, and Anna all talk. Karen says they are technically a group of 4 because they came from the same swap tribe. Anna agrees and says she's not going to vote anyone from this group of 4. Instead, she'll vote either Liana or Caden off first. Boo Boo breathes out and says he doesn't really know how to feel voting off his own daughter. Karen says she understands it's tough to think about, but if they feel like Liana isn't a threat, perhaps they can vote out Caden first. Anna says it's a thought, but they also have to be aware that Caden is still a valuable number for them. Liana later chats with Caden, trying to see if there are any cracks within the Hupai group. Caden says he doesn't know the new dynamics that well between Anna, Boo Boo, and Allison. He doesn't fully trust them anymore because he's been away from them for many days. Liana says she never met them before and only knows Karen, but she clearly likes hanging out with them. Caden says they can work as a duo right now and try to get someone like Karen onto their side. He also tells Liana to talk to Boo Boo, so he ends up trusting her. He has a good relationship with him from before the swap, but she'll have to put in some work as well. Liana doesn't feel great about having to talk with Boo Boo, but says she'll eventually do it. Boo Boo makes dinner for the tribe, and Liana looks visibly unhappy around him. He notices her attitude but chooses to ignore it. Anna talks with Allison to keep her close relationship-wise. She tells Allison that nobody wrote her name in the swap mainly because she was still part of the Hupai alliance. Allison says she was sure she was next to go after BJ, but Anna claims this is untrue. She claims she never considered voting her out and that the plan was going to be either Mark or Romero. Allison says that although she seems a bit nervous, this doesn't mean she's going to flip to work with Liana and Caden. She'll still stay loyal to their group of 4 with Karen and Boo Boo. At the table, Liana and Karen eat their food and Boo Boo comes by to ask Liana if she wants a hug. Karen almost chokes on her food when she hears this, and Liana immediately moves away from Boo Boo, beginning to yell at him for being weird. Boo Boo apologizes and says he doesn't know how else to start a conversation with her, but she pleads to him to just avoid her altogether. At the Hoo Hoo tribe, everyone talks about the Cave of Exile twist that Tanner is part of right now. Romero speculates that Tanner will have to join a tribe, whether it's at tomorrow's reward challenge or the immunity challenge. Mark thinks Tanner will probably have to replace another person's position on a tribe, whether it's after tribal council or before. All 6 still remain fairly clueless as to what exactly will happen to Tanner. Ivy chats with Sarah and tells her she would be happy to work with her still since they somewhat connected previously. Sarah nods and says she is open to work with her and Adriana. Ivy asks her if she thinks the guys will stick together as a 3, but Sarah claims she's not sure yet. She still hasn't had a solid conversation with Eric. As for Romero and Mark, it's possible they'll keep each other safe. Ivy says that if it ends up being one of her or Adriana, she asks Sarah to at least put in a good word for her so that the guys choose to target Adriana. Sarah says she'll do what she can. Both Ivy and Sarah then see an opportunity to eat up all the leftovers from dinner so that nobody else can have it. They quietly dig into their food while everyone else sleeps. They giggle all night and remain uncaught. Day 14, and it's time for the reward challenge. Both tribes arrive and wonder if Tanner will join them as well. However, Justin never mentions Tanner's name and starts explaining the reward challenge rules. In this, there will be one-on-one rounds where the goal is to fish up the most expensive catch using a fishing rod. The person with the best catch will score for their tribe. If there's a tie during a round, both tribes score a point. The first tribe to score 3 points will win reward. The reward is 4 comfort items placed at their camp. Round 1 begins, and it's between Anna and Mark. Anna goes first and casts her fishing line into the water. She ends up catching something and reels it in. She finds out she caught nothing, meaning she earned $0. Mark goes next and throws his line into the water. He reels it in despite not feeling anything tug on it, and ends up with nothing as well. This means both tribes earn a point due to the tie. In round 2 we have Allison up against Ivy. Allison goes first and throws her line into the water. She waits a bit for something to hook, and she finally feels something. She reels it in and catches dead coral for $1. Ivy ends up going next, throwing her line into the water. She then waits a few minutes and reels in her fishing line. However, she catches nothing, meaning Hoopai leads 2-1. In round 3, Liana and Sarah go against each other. Liana goes first, throwing her line into the water. She eventually reels in the line and catches $1 worth of dead coral. Sarah is up next and throws her line into the water, eventually reeling it in. She catches nothing, meaning Hoopai has 3 points and wins reward in the form of comfort items. All 6 of them cheer and Justin lets them know their furniture pieces will await them back at camp. He sends both tribes back to their camps, so they head out. At Hoopai, everyone sees the new furniture pieces they got. They have a lounge chair, a meditation cushion, a couch, and a stack of pillows. Allison, Boo Boo, and Anna discuss Liana's interactions with people. Boo Boo feels hurt because Liana refused to look at him, let alone talk to him yesterday. Anna tells him their past is obviously in the way of the game, so he needs to expect that she'll react negatively. Boo Boo says he failed as a father, and Allison and Anna hug him, telling him he needs to keep his head up. Allison says that if they do make the merge with Liana, she might eventually get used to his presence and potentially talk things out with him. Boo Boo doesn't think that'll happen, but will try to talk with her again at some point. Back at Hoo Hoo, Sarah and Romero talk about who they should vote out first if they go to tribal council tomorrow. Sarah suggests they go for Adriana because she's a much more threatening player in the merge. If they take her out now, they don't have to worry too much about her. Mark eventually joins the two of them and asks for them to fill him in. Sarah tells him that she feels like Adriana is the bigger threat between her and Ivy and that she'd need to go first if they go to tribal. Mark says he'll do it if that's the consensus. He doesn't want to ruffle any feathers by going against it. Romero then comes up with an idea that could potentially earn them an extra number in merge. He says that they could actually use the rival redemption twist to their advantage. If they vote out Ivy, Mark can simply decline her from rejoining the game, meaning Jaya would be one step closer to returning to the game by default. As for Adriana, she would automatically get a second chance to return to the game. Mark is hesitant because he doesn't want to play Ivy super dirty like that because she's his mother-in-law. Even though she will have to go eventually, he doesn't want to have such a big hand in her going home. Romero says they have to think long-term, and getting Jaya back in the game is smarter for original Hoo Hoo. Night 14. At Hoo Pai, Liana joins the women for dinner. Since she's trying to find a way into the majority, she asks the women if they feel like they should form an all-women's alliance. They would have the majority on this tribe and in the merge if they can reconnect with Ivy, Adriana, and Sarah from the other tribe. Not only that, but Jaya could potentially become an 8th number for them if she rejoins the game. Karen, Allison, and Anna seem to like the sound of this and say it would be iconic if they did that. Liana giggles and teases the guys to watch out. Day 15, and it's time for the immunity challenge. Both tribes arrive to their mats and Justin begins by telling both tribes that Tanner is joining to watch the challenge. Tanner then walks in and they all wave to him. Tanner stands next to Justin and Justin tells everyone that Tanner will need to join the tribe that loses today. He'll be voting at their tribal council and will be part of the tribe officially as a 7th member. They all nod, so Justin explains the challenge rules. In this, 4 members will need to arrange flowers at the arranging table one at a time. Once done, they must get to the mat ahead so the next person can begin arranging their flowers. Once all 4 are done, the 2 remaining tribe mates will work on their own block puzzle. The first tribe with both members completed their block puzzle will win immunity for the tribe, safe from the vote. The losing tribe will need to vote out the 8th person out of the game. With that, the tribes divide their arrangers and puzzle makers. On Hoo Hoo, Ivy and Sarah will do the puzzle. On Hoo Pai, Allison and Karen will do the puzzle. The challenge starts with Eric and Liana arranging their flowers. Liana finishes way before Eric and reaches her mat, letting Anna go next. Anna and Eric arrange their flowers, and Eric finally finishes his, allowing Adriana to go next for Hoo Hoo. She begins arranging her flowers while Anna continues arranging hers. Eventually, Anna finishes and reaches her mat, letting Caden go next for Hoo Pai. He starts working on his flowers. Shortly after, Adriana finishes arranging her flowers and reaches her mat. Mark is up next for Hoo Hoo and begins the arranging. Caden finishes up and gets to the mat, letting Boo Boo go up last for Hoo Pai. Mark starts to fall behind, letting Hoo Pai extend their lead. He finally finishes his flowers and reaches his mat, so Romero goes up last for Hoo Hoo and starts arranging his flowers. Boo Boo finishes and gets to the mat, meaning Allison and Karen can start the puzzle. They start off their puzzle with a giant lead against Hoo Hoo. Romero eventually finishes the flowers for Hoo Hoo and so Ivy and Sarah head over to their puzzle tables. They start working on the puzzle along with Allison and Karen. An hour passes by, and Karen and Allison still lead with Sarah very close behind. However, Ivy is still struggling with the early pieces of her puzzle. After more time, Allison finishes her puzzle first for Hupai, leaving just Karen to do her puzzle. Ivy finally speeds up on her puzzle, but it doesn't matter because Sarah finishes, followed by Karen, meaning Allison and Karen win immunity for Hupai, safe from Tribal Council tonight. Huhu will need to go to Tribal Council tonight where someone will be the 8th person voted out of Survivor Rivals. As an added twist, Huhu will need to go to Tribal Council immediately, meaning they get no time to strategize at camp. They are all in shock, and Justin lets them know that Tanner will be part of Tribal Council and will be eligible for the vote. He tells Hupai to go back to camp and tells Huhu he'll see them very soon for Tribal Council. It's night 15, and it's time for the immediate Tribal Council for Huhu. They all sit down and look around at each other, thinking about the vote. Justin begins the discussion by asking Romero how shocking it is to not only go to Tribal immediately, but have Tanner as an additional member for tonight's vote. Romero says that everyone somewhat expected Tanner to join the losing tribe's tribe, but they did not ever think there would be an immediate Tribal. Ivy smirks and says they really should have figured out that something was off since the sun was beginning to set at the challenge. Justin asks Tanner if he wants to share his experience with everyone regarding his trip to the Cave of Exile. Tanner reveals that he given 2 options when he got there. He could either force an immediate Tribal, or give people camp time to discuss before the vote. He decided to go for the immediate Tribal because he felt like he was better off creating chaos than giving the enemy more time to come up with a vote plan. Sarah squints and then looks at Mark. Mark then whispers to her and taps Romero's back to get his attention. The 3 of them begin to whisper, and Mark then signals Eric to join them, so he does. Adriana, Ivy, and Tanner then huddle up and also whisper. Justin keeps quiet, watching both groups whisper each other. Ivy then asks Eric and Sarah out loud to come to the corner so she can speak with them. The 3 of them then whisper in the corner. Ivy asks them to vote with Hupai, but Sarah looks hesitant. Tanner meanwhile leans towards Adriana and whispers to her that he thinks he's the easy vote for the other group and asks her to use the idol. Adriana looks at him and then looks ahead of her, beginning to think about what she should do. Ivy, Eric, and Sarah eventually finish talking and sit back down. Mark taps Sarah's leg and asks her if they're good, and she nods. Justin then asks if they are all settled down and ready to vote, and they all nod.
I'll tally the votes. If anyone has a hidden immunity idol and they want to play it, now would be the time to do so. Alright, I'll read the votes. First vote. Tanner. Romero. That's 1 vote Tanner, 1 vote Romero. Tanner. Romero. We're tied, 2 votes Tanner, 2 votes Romero. Tanner. 3 votes Tanner, 2 votes Romero. Romero. Tied again, 3 votes Romero, 3 votes Tanner, 1 vote left. 8th person voted out of Survivor Rivals. Romero.
Romero's face turns red and Sarah looks at Mark, confused by the vote count. Adriana and Tanner uncontrollably smile and laugh to themselves, relieved by the outcome. Eric remains quiet and avoids eye contact with Romero, Mark, and Sarah. Romero gets up and scans the tribe. He looks at Eric and asks him if he did this, and Eric gives a short nod. Romero lets out a deep sigh and walks to get his torch. He puts it down next to Justin and watches it get snuffed. He walks out without a word and eventually takes the idol out of his pocket and throws it far away near the shoreline. Everyone else notices and speculates amongst each other if that was an idol. Justin tells the 6 of them they should head back to camp, so they begin making their way back. Romero reaches a sign and finds out that since he eliminated his rival already, he will not be allowed to compete for a second chance in the game. Next time on Survivor Rivals. After a crazy tribal council with an unexpected departure, Eric decides to work with the opposing side. Meanwhile, Mark tries to fit in with the new majority, claiming he'll be a loyal soldier and shield in the merge. On Hoo-Hoo, Liana finally talks with Boo Boo as she realizes she might need him as a number. Will she successfully convince him to work with her? With only immunity on the line, which tribe will head to tribal council, and will another original Hoo-Hoo member go home? Find out on Sunday's episode. Romero's final thoughts. Romero is extremely pissed that Eric flipped on Exile. He doesn't see the logic in doing so because Tanner, Adriana, and Ivy are an unbreakable trio with an idol on their side. Romero is even more angry at the fact that he got out with an idol. He didn't see any warning signs to play it, let alone play it on himself. He doesn't know who else to blame but Eric. He claims that at this rate, Eric is playing to become the first merge boot this season.